After my divorce, I didn't want to see another person for a long time. I was tired. Tired of the fighting, the lawyers, the noise. I just wanted to disappear for a while. My girlfriend at the time, Emily, booked us a quiet cabin by a frozen lake up north. It was off-season, surrounded by tall pine trees and snow-covered hills. Most of the homes nearby were dark. We didn't mind, we came for the quiet. The cabin itself was beautiful. 2 stories, big windows that looked out over the lake, and a skylight right above the bed. The first 2 days were peaceful. We played board games, cooked easy meals, sat by the fire. Snow fell constantly, but gently. It felt like the world had paused just for us. Then, on the 3rd night, something changed. I woke up to a strange sound. It wasn't the wind or the fireplace crackling. It was softer. A low buzzing, like a motor or machine. I slipped out of bed quietly and walked to the window. At first, I didn't see anything, just white. But then, movement. A snowmobile crawling slowly across the frozen lake. That alone wasn't weird. Locals probably use them all the time, but it was after midnight during a snowstorm, and the person riding it was all alone. They came to a stop maybe 50 yards from our cabin. Then they got off, they started waving, not at the sky, not in random directions, directly at us. I hesitated. I didn't know if they could even see us through the window, but I got this awful feeling, like they already knew we were watching. I woke up Emily. She looked out the window, then gasped. "It's a woman," she whispered. "She's yelling." I opened the sliding door and stepped onto the deck. The cold hit me hard, but I kept walking toward the edge of the lake. She was shouting something. "My son!" she cried. "Please, he ran off into the woods. I lost him in the storm." I didn't think, I just reacted. If there was a kid out there, he wouldn't last long in that weather. "Stay inside," I told Emily. "Lock the door behind me." I made my way down the slope toward the frozen water. It crunched beneath my boots, solid and safe. As I got closer, I saw her more clearly. Big fur coat, long braid down her back, tears on her cheeks. "He's only 7, she said. "He got scared and ran. I don't know where he went." I looked around. No tracks, no sign of another snowmobile. "Where was the last place you saw him?" I asked. She looked at me strangely. "Do you still have the matches?" she asked. I blinked. "What?" "The matches," she said again. Then she smiled. And that smile flipped my stomach. It wasn't a sad smile. It wasn't even a desperate one. It was like she was pleased. Before I could move, she pulled a gun from her coat. Wallet, phone, now. I froze. My mind was trying to catch up, trying to make sense of how fast this had all changed. I said now. I gave her what she wanted. I didn't argue. I didn't try to be brave. She backed up, keeping the gun pointed at me, then climbed onto the snowmobile. "I liked the house," she said. "Cozy." Then she was gone, swallowed by snow and fog. I stood there shaking, more from fear than cold, before turning and sprinting back toward the cabin. I yelled for Emily. She was already on the phone with the police. They arrived almost an hour later, but it was too late. Fresh snow had covered her tracks. They searched anyway, but didn't find anything. No snowmobile, no woman, no sign she'd ever been there. There was only one thing that didn't sit right with me: the box of matches. It had been sitting on the porch when we arrived. No return address, just a note. "Enjoy your stay, stay warm." We thought it was from the host, but when I called him later, he swore he hadn't sent it. He sounded genuinely shaken when I told him what happened, said he'd refund the entire trip. He also mentioned that he hadn't told anyone the place was booked that week. So, how did she know we'd be there? How did she leave that package? Or was it already waiting for whoever showed up? I've tried not to think about it, but sometimes I wonder if it wasn't about the robbery at all. She didn't take the car. She didn't steal anything from the cabin, just my phone and my wallet. Like she wanted to take something personal, like she wanted me to know she'd been close. Even now, I can't light a match without thinking of her face, smiling. I used to love our lake house. It sat at the end of a winding road, hidden in the trees, 2 stories tall with a creaky dock and the clearest water I've ever seen. When we were kids, my little sister and I would drag our sleeping bags up into the attic and pretend we were camping. That attic was our little world, just one small window, but from it we could see the whole lake. It felt like nothing bad could ever touch us there. Now, I can't even look at the place without feeling sick. It started after my grandparents passed away. We inherited their old furniture. Tables, trunks, even my grandpa's handmade rocking chair. We didn't have space in the main room, so we stacked most of it in the attic. No one went up there after that. The window got dusty. The air smelled like mothballs and wood rot. That was the end of our childhood hiding spot. Years went by. I moved out, college, job, life. The lake house sat empty most of the year. My parents didn't want to rent it out. Too many memories, too many valuable things left behind. But eventually, they gave in. The man they rented it to was a local, a veteran. He restored antiques for a living. That's what sold my dad. He said anyone who worked with his hands and served his country deserved a quiet place to live. I met the guy once, short, white hair, heavy limp. His skin looked like melted wax, burn scars, I think. He spoke slowly, with a voice that scratched at your ears. He gave me the creeps. But Dad liked him. That was enough. I never saw him again. A year passed. I didn't think about him much until the summer we all went back for one last family trip. Me, my parents, and my sister. She had just graduated college. It felt like a perfect way to celebrate. My parents had a new dog by then, a black lab mix named Bear. Sweet, loyal, but always alert. The kind of dog that didn't bark without reason. The night we arrived, we left Bear inside and went to dinner. We hadn't stocked groceries yet, and we figured the house would be fine. But when we got back, something felt off. You know that weird silence that's too quiet. Like the whole room is holding its breath. That's what we walked into. Then we saw Bear. He was lying by the stairs whimpering with blood smeared across the floor beneath him. My sister screamed. My mom grabbed her phone to call 911. My dad didn't say a word. He walked straight to the kitchen and grabbed a knife. I followed him. We moved through the house slowly, room by room. Nothing was broken, no open windows, no smashed doors, until we got to the second floor. That's when my dad stopped. His eyes locked on the ceiling. The attic hatch was open, not all the way, just a few inches. Enough to see a soft yellow glow shining down through the crack. A flashlight. I couldn't move, I couldn't breathe. But my dad, he went up. He climbed that ladder like it was nothing. I stood at the bottom, heart pounding, waiting to hear something. Anything. Footsteps, a fight, a voice, but there was nothing, just silence. Then my dad came back down. He looked pale, like he'd just seen something he couldn't explain. "It's him," he whispered, "the tenant. He never left." I didn't understand. He was supposed to be gone. His lease had ended months ago. My dad had even told us the locks were changed, but he was still here, living in our attic. I didn't have time to process it before my mom stormed up the stairs. When she found out what was happening, she screamed louder than I'd ever heard. She'd already called the police. So we waited. 40 minutes later, they arrived. They went up and brought him down. He looked terrible. Skin even worse than before, clothes filthy, beard matted. He didn't speak, just stared at the floor, quiet. They found our house key in his pocket. That's what set my mom off again. The locks had never been changed. My dad lied. He said he'd meant to, that he'd gotten busy, that the guy seemed harmless. But this man had been living in our attic for who knows how long. He had access to every room, every moment, every one of us. Bear survived, but just barely. The vet said the cuts were from a knife. Defensive wounds, that was the hardest part. Knowing Bear had tried to protect our home, and that he almost died because of it. But here's the part I can't get out of my head. When I finally worked up the nerve to go back upstairs days later, I opened the attic hatch and climbed up with a flashlight. Everything looked exactly how we'd left it years ago. Boxes, blankets, old trunks. But one thing was different. A chair had been dragged across the attic, placed directly beneath the small window. A sleeping bag lay beside it, and in front of the chair, stacked neatly, were Polaroids. Dozens of them. Photos of me, my sister, my parents, even Bear, all taken from above, from that tiny window. He'd been watching us long before we ever knew. This happened last summer. I was 21, and after my breakup, I was a mess. 3 years with the same girl, and then nothing. I needed a break from everything. That's when my friend Eli invited me to his family's lake house. It was massive. 3 stories, private dock, no neighbors for what felt like miles. His parents were rich, always flying around the world, so the place sat empty most of the year. I think that's why it always felt kind of haunted, even in daylight. But I didn't care. It was quiet, peaceful, just what I needed. That night, Eli and I were sitting on the dock drinking beers and watching the sunset over the lake. I remember the water was so still, it looked fake, like painted glass. We weren't talking much, just existing. Then I saw it. A flash. From across the lake, in the direction of the far side, where none of the houses had cars in the driveways or lights on. I squinted. Flash, flash, flash. Then a pause. Then long flash, long flash, long flash. Then again, 3 short. Is that Morse code? I asked. Eli sat up. Dude, that's SOS? I laughed, but my skin was crawling. Come on, you serious? He nodded. Short, 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 long, 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 short, short, short. That's help. Someone signaling help. We both stared in silence. The light kept flashing for another minute or so, then stopped completely. Call the cops? I said. Eli hesitated. We've been drinking. And that was true. I had an open case for driving under the influence, and I wasn't going anywhere near the police again if I could help it. But what if someone's actually in trouble? He said. I nodded. After a few seconds, he said, let's just go check it out. If it's real, we call for help. If it's nothing, no harm done. So we grabbed 2 flashlights and one of his dad's old kayaks. I felt dumb climbing into it, but adrenaline was already building in my chest. The lake was colder than I expected, and darker. Every paddle stroke echoed. Halfway across, I couldn't even hear the wind anymore. Just water and our breathing. We didn't speak. Eventually, we reached the other side. The house where the light came from was run down. Paint peeling, weeds taking over the yard, shutters hanging off the windows. The dock was crooked, almost sunken. We couldn't tie the kayak to it, so we just dragged it into the tall grass. There were no lights on, no movement. We climbed up toward the house. We weren't laughing anymore. Eli whispered, "This feels wrong." He wasn't wrong, but we were already there. Instead of going to the front door, we circled around until we found an unlocked window. We climbed in. Carefully, quietly. The house was dead silent. No furniture, no photos, just bare wood floors and stained walls. There were footprints in the dust, though. Someone had been there. We made our way through the kitchen, then the living room. Nothing. Then we found the stairs. As we climbed, each step creaked like it was warning us to stop. On the second floor, there were 3 doors. We picked the one where the flashing had come from. Eli opened it slowly. The room was empty, except for a small folding table facing the window. On it sat a flashlight. Still warm, still glowing. And beside it, a voice recorder. Eli pressed play, click, then static, then 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. It was a recording. Someone had been playing the Morse code on loop, on purpose. This was a setup, I whispered. Before Eli could respond, we heard something. A thump from the hallway. Then heavier footsteps, slow but sure, moving toward us. We ran, back down the stairs, through the empty house, out the window. As we hit the grass, Eli stopped. "The kayak," he whispered. It was gone. There was only ripples where it used to be. And then we saw the shape. Someone, tall, bulky, fast, running toward us from the back of the house. I didn't wait, I just bolted for the water. Eli followed. We dove into the lake without thinking. The cold was like knives, every muscle screamed. I heard splashing behind us. Someone had followed us in, but I didn't look back. We swam until my arms gave out. When we finally reached Eli's dock, I collapsed onto the boards, gasping. My chest was on fire. My legs felt like cement. We crawled into the house, locked every door, and called the police. They took 45 minutes to arrive. When they finally did, they paddled across the lake and searched the abandoned house. They found nothing. No footprints, no flashlight, no recorder, no man, nothing. They told us the house had been empty for years, but it wasn't empty. Not that night. Someone had wanted us to come. They made sure we saw that light. They knew we'd check. They watched us climb inside. And now they know how long it took us to swim across the lake.